Welcome to the new Experience Strategy Podcast with your host, Joe Pine. You know, the guy who wrote the book on experiences and is also in the process of writing a really incredible book about transformations. We've also got Dave Norton, an experience futurist, and me, Aranza Savas, a lead strategist for meaningful engagement at Stone Mantle, the experience strategy company itself. Each week, we're going to cover a topic or a company that's in the news and show you how companies are applying the best experience strategy principles to their business models. Of course, the best principles are always customer focused, so you're always going to hear us talking from the customer's perspective. Today, we're digging into a recent Wall Street Journal article about Cracker Barrel. Now, they're updating their decor, their menu, their pricing, and sort of their experience in an aim to attract new and younger customers. They don't say that explicitly, but I think we all know that's what they're doing. This is a conversation I know well. I worked for a legacy company for many years at Weight Watchers. We went through a very similar transformation, trying to keep core base happy while expanding to attract a new audience. We've seen legacy companies do this over and over throughout time to mixed results. And so my hope is that today, between Joe, Dave, and I, we can call out what works in those efforts, what doesn't, where these things go awry, and specifically what we believe is working and maybe a little challenging about what Cracker Barrel specifically is doing. I think Cracker Barrel, like so many of these legacy brands, it's a legacy brand because it's beloved by the people who love it. And so diluting anything about what is cherished and true and nostalgic comes with a lot of risk. So let's start, guys, by just talking about sort of your key takeaways, insights, what stood out to you the most in this Cracker Barrel story, both in terms of big opportunity, but also in terms of big challenges. Joe? Want to kick us off?
First, I think we should explain who Cracker Barrel is. For those
fair point. I'm from the South, so I don't like Shields last week on our show. You were like, didn't even know they were in Minnesota. They were Minnesota based. I had never heard of Shields. Well, I'd heard of it. I'd just never been to one, I guess. But Cracker Barrel, it's so much a part of the fabric of the South, I feel like.
It is a very nostalgic restaurant. It is, if you're in your 60s, 70s, it's going to remind you of your youth, of diners that you went to back then. The decor is all old timey, I'll say. And it's what I've always called a meatloaf and potatoes sort of guy, sort of place. And one of my rules in going to restaurants is I don't like to get something I can get at home. I want to get something that I don't get at home. And so I don't tend to go to meatloaf and potato sort of places because I get meatloaf and potatoes every once in a while. But as you said, there are a set of customers that really do love it. One of the interesting things, it's one of the first, well, actually, it's of a class of diners, like if you remember old Howard Johnson's, Hojo's, and others that were on highways and sort of, so was a place you're going from one place to another and you stop in.
Denny's is a great example of that.
And it feels like home. But I was going to say, one of the differences, though, of a Denny's but more like a Hojo's and others, is it has a lot of goods for sale. That it's not just a restaurant. The article talks about how 20% of their sales are actually by where people are buying things that remind you of the memorabilia of the restaurant, memorabilia of the time. They maybe road things also that you want to do because you are traveling, which will segue to my first comment on it. This is the Experience Strategy Podcast, and there is precious little in their 3-year transformation to talk about that had anything to do with experience.
Noted.
Right. I mean, they're making the decor, they're updating the decor. They're taking away a lot of the stuff on the walls that's covering everything. They're painting it, making it a lighter color. So they use the term aesthetics in the article. There's aesthetics with an AE, which is how things look, as opposed to aesthetics with an E in our 4 realms of experience model. But there wasn't anything about how they're going to have better interactions with customers, what they're going to do when people have to wait, how they greet, how they send them off, how they create some level of drama in the place, how they make a marker for the experience on the highway so this is the place that you want to go to, right? There was precious little of actual experience there.
Yeah, no, my parents, my dad in particular, loves Cracker Barrel.
Well, see,
And
now
every
there's the
time-
whole problem right there, right?
Well, okay.
It's the problem with these
Well-
legacy transformations.
Well, yeah, it is a problem, but at the same time, let me complicate that thought for a second. One of the things that I think is most interesting about Cracker Barrel from a merchandising standpoint is some of you may remember way back when that there was this phenomenon that was discovered in a book called Why We Buy that said any woman that gets her butt brushed when she's walking down an aisle is going to leave fairly quickly. Okay, so the whole butt brush phenomenon was what led to wider aisles. And
I'm glad you clarified what we were talking about there.
right, it's the wider aisle thing. Sorry, I didn't know how to. So if you're
It
picking
just could
your
have been read so many ways.
okay.
Okay, so
my
wider
point
aisle.
is Cracker Barrel is one of those places that you go into and like there's not enough room. You have to walk sideways through the merchandise. It's so tight and people love it. They love kind of meandering. It's the exact opposite of that particular phenomenon. But my mother loves to walk through anytime she possibly can. So I mean,
she likes her butt brushed. Is that what you're saying?
well, no.
I really
actually
hope your
listen.
mother's not listening to this.
But it's so compact for those of you that haven't ever been in there. And I think that there's something kind of fun about even just kind of the bad way that they do merchandising, the way they kind of have things stacked. That feels very nostalgic.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of fits with their brand, the country store, the place where you go to buy stuff, but also to dine. Because it was the only store in town. That's what it was supposed to evoke. Is that idea? And I haven't bought a rocking chair, but I've sat in a lot of their rocking chairs and thought about buying rocking chairs that sit out there on the front porch. Probably the closest thing to an experience is the rocking chairs. Sitting
You're
out on the
absolutely
front.
and the games. So they
And
have
the
games on
We'll
tables.
always play the games, right?
And that sort of ritual, right, is a big piece of their core experience. But that goes completely unnoted in the Wall Street Journal piece. So the one thing they mention is service and a welcoming atmosphere, but they go into extraordinary detail about different dishes, different pricing strategies. But I agree with Joe. I think the major thing missing from this story, and I don't mean just the Wall Street Journal's reporting on it specifically, but the story of this transformation, how the executives are talking about, is what this means for the experience and how they modernize nostalgia.
Well, it's almost like their idea of modernizing nostalgia is experience light. So they want to lighten everything. They want to probably create more
Brighten it up.
space, brighten it, that kind of a thing. I can't think of I think Taco Time has done something similar. I can't
is
think of a
Taco
single
Time?
brand. It's like a really bad fast food restaurant. They're not a client of ours necessarily, but
Necessarily.
I think
Not yet,
No,
maybe
it
not
forever
ever.
will be. I mean,
Never ever will be at this point, right? Okay, so I think that they could have transformed the experience, but what they've done is transformed, to your point, Joe, the aesthetic, and it's not it's not going to make anyone happy. And it's a classic example of the brand leads, the brand thinks in terms of the aesthetics and a certain demographic.
Right.
And that's not what makes for the most successful experience strategies. When the experience leads, which is where they originally started, and they're focused on situations that people find themselves in, traveling as a family, needing knickknacks. What are you going to do? That when
Reconnecting
moment,
multi-generationally.
reconnecting, yeah. Then that activity, then you go down a very different path. You start thinking about things other than color palettes, and I think that's a big issue.
Those are decisions that support an experience, not vice versa. Which
Right.
is like if we come back to what's the big issue here in these transformations, it's usually that experience is a byproduct and kind of a thoughtless, unintentional byproduct of brand choices. And I'm not saying that brand decisions have to dilute the value of an organization, but I do think they should be made in support of experience.
Yep. And I want to come back to exactly that point after a word from our sponsor.
So today we're hosting this episode from balmy Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right here in the USA. This is the fourth and final summit of the Experience Strategy Collaboratives for this season. It's being hosted by long-term members, Fiserv, as in Fiserv Forum. For those of you who like the Bucks, I had to have Dave explain to me what that meant. Big sports fan, obviously.
Aransas does sports.
You're listening to the sports show with Aransas. It's very short. The Experience Strategy Collaboratives, for those of you who don't know, is a year-long program designed to help strategists build better experiences. And we hope that Cracker Barrel joins us next year. You and your company join the program, and then you decide on a product or initiative that you want to be informed by the research that we do. Other non-competing companies also join at the same time, and then each quarter we meet for summits where you connect with folks from other industries, and then in between we do amazing research on your behalf to advance your initiative and the other companies in tandem. So we are just right in the middle of our recruitment season for the 2025-2026 program. And it's really a more valuable time than ever to join because there are, frankly, more threats to your business model than just tariffs right now. And we know that the Collaboratives is really the best place to meet those threats head on. So this year, our theme is going to be only companies with a point of view survive. And for listeners of this podcast, we have an amazing experience to offer. For one happy listener, we're going to be giving away a one-person membership, not a full team. Just to clarify, that is a $35,000 value. So yes, one happy winner is going to participate in the Collaboratives next year for free with all these amazing brands. So there's just a few rules, and you got to subscribe to the Experience Strategist Substack to be eligible. We've posted an entry form in the show notes. Please sign up, enter to win through June 30th, 2025. I'm so excited about this program, guys. And we talk about some of the forces at play here. So it's a nice segue back into our topic because our friends at Cracker Barrel are making these decisions, I think, based on a strategic point of view about the forces that are happening right now. You mentioned the retail aspect of this. So unlike a lot of their competitors, these tariffs are directly hitting them because of these high retail sales and putting them in an even more compromised position as they go into this transformation. But I think one of the powerful things about experiences is that it doesn't mean your company has to spend more money necessarily on objects or renovations. It's really something that can come from the core of the teams that you already employ. And most powerfully, you know, I think when it's done really well, and they don't talk about the employees very much in this article, right? So why do transformations fail? In large part because the employees who are the most loyal disbelieve in the transformation. They don't feel like it's authentic. They don't feel like their tried and true customers, the people they care about day in, day out, are going to be happy. And they're just hearing the dissent. Rarely are they going to notice that like 2% increase of people under 45 walking in the door, right? Like you're not going to notice that as a server. What you're going to notice is Joe Bob, who's there every Thursday, is pretty unhappy because his chicken is different.
If you ignore your regulars, right, ignore the ones that are buying the most, and you're doing things that are going to push them away, then it's not going to be a very successful transformation. And I know all of us hate it, like you said, Dave, is how this is brand led or brand team led, I might say. We all hate the notion of looking at demographics, right? What they're focused on here is demographics, rather than understanding what are the jobs to be done that people want. And the one obvious one relates directly to something that you said about the generations, right? Is that an obvious job to add to what they're doing? Think about how you do this is to connect multiple generations together. How to become the place that grandparents bring their kids, for example, or that you have a family get together out.
Sure.
And if you can do that, then you're going to automatically bring along these younger people to naturally gravitate toward this as a place that they want to go, as opposed to try to attract them without any connection to the place, its history, its nostalgia, and what it evokes.
I think that was actually Aransas that brought that up. The article doesn't mention it at all, and I think it's just a real easy and obvious thing for the company to be thinking about. You know, Aransas, go into this topic of tariffs for a second. You know, there's a lot of companies. I read another article that just hit me like a ton of bricks. There's a lot of small businesses that are going to be impacted by this. And of course, we don't really know what's going to happen. Nobody knows for sure, except maybe Donald Trump, right? So we're still kind of waiting to see, and we could be wrong. But the article clearly talks about the fact that Cracker Barrel finds themselves in a very interesting time to be doing this transformation. And I want to point out two things. First of all, this is a challenging and interesting time for the customer as well as for the company. And the article kind of points out that they don't know whether the customer is actually going to go to Cracker Barrel. Maybe more people will go to Cracker Barrel because it's so economical, right? And that to me is interesting because the reason why they're going is because their situation changed. It's because now they can have a night out and it's only going to cost them $15 a plate rather than $30 a plate, right? So there is an opportunity for Cracker Barrel to really capitalize being a lower cost, value based kind of product on this change in the situation. Does the transformation support situational change? Because it's going to switch back at some point. Right. At some point, the crisis is going to pass. How is Cracker Barrel going to adapt to the new reality that people have? And I think that's really important. The second thing is that Cracker Barrel as a company is going through a real shift as well. How do they make that shift successful during this time period? I think it's, like you said, Aransas, it's employees, it's authenticity. I don't think there's a lot of customers that are going to be saying, "Oh, hey, you haven't rebranded our location yet. We're not going." There's a lot of other things that they need to be focused on.
Right. Well, and I think to sort of mindset shift that they're talking about takes decades to bed in. So I think it's a much smarter strategy to focus on your experience so that your customers are delighted and they are telling other people how great it is to be in this place, that they're returning more often because they feel good there. Right. It just moves the needle faster financially, though. And I think actually they have some really fun stuff they could play with. So one of the things that got me really excited in this article was the idea of campfire meals, which I just think is an adorable idea, right? They said it's like a meal that's all like wrapped up. I mean, I don't know what the logistics are to this, but can't we have an actual campfire out back where people can go and cook their own food? Like, give them a little vacation. Cool. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, there's certain locations where they could possibly do that.
Right.
Many of them are in Texas, but yeah.
Next to KOAs.
Okay, next to KOAs. Right. And like, how amazing would that be to we talked about Scheels last week, and to me, these feel like two sides of a coin. And I really recommend those of you who didn't hear that episode yet, go back and listen to that episode because they're weirdly companion pieces. It wasn't really our intention, but I think they teach us a lot about how to think about experience as a part of a transformation for a brand. And so what Scheels did really well is they said, let us create experiences for you that meet you in different modes. And there's an inkling of it in the journal article because they say, we don't want to be pigeonholed into, I just want to go to Cracker Barrel to eat hearty, right? So they are thinking about different like physical needs, but I think there's just so much more really interesting and really differentiating opportunities that could build on their brand and make it feel more meaningful than ever. This has been an exciting conversation. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. Next week, we're going to bring you another article, another story, another experience from another company. Our hope is that you keep learning from each of these micro case studies and our perspectives of them, and that they help inform your point of view on your company's experience. Have questions, reach out to us. You can find us in all the places, LinkedIn, comment on the articles, but most importantly, come over to Substack and hang out with us there. We have an amazing community of experienced strategists. Joe writes an incredible transformation Substack there, and Dave leads the charge on the Experienced Strategist Substack. We'd love to connect with you there, hear which stories you're interested in hearing more of, what questions these conversations bring up, and let us know what we missed in this. Because as always, you're seeing it from your perspective.